Hey everyone, you ever get a pay raise, you're feeling good about it, but then you go to the grocery store and it feels like your money just disappears. It's a super common frustration, and today we're going to solve the economic mystery behind it. It usually starts with a thought just like this one. You're at the checkout line, maybe you're paying some bills, and you just notice, wow, everything costs more. This isn't just a hunch you have, it's actually the first clue in our whole investigation. And that really gets us to the heart of the matter. What is this invisible force that makes a bigger paycheck feel smaller? It's a weird paradox that pretty much affects all of us, and we're about to break down exactly how it works. Okay, so to solve this mystery, first things first, we need a way to actually measure that feeling of everything is getting more expensive. Because, economists don't just go by feelings. They've got a specific tool to track the price of, well, pretty much everything. And that tool is called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. The easiest way to think about it is like an official scorecard for inflation. Instead of just vaguely saying prices are up, the CPI gives us the cold, hard data. It shows us exactly how much they've gone up. And let me tell you, lately that index has been climbing. But here's the thing, rising prices are only one half of the equation. To really, truly understand why your wallet feels lighter, we have to look past what things cost and start focusing on what your money is actually worth. Which brings us to the core of this whole explainer, a concept I call the real wage trap. This is where we really uncovered that disconnect between the number you see on your paycheck and your actual real-world spending power. Okay, so there are two kinds of wages we need to get straight. First, you've got nominal wages. Super simple. That's the literal amount of money you earn, the face value on your pay stub. But real wages, now that's the hero of our story. That's what your money can actually buy after you account for all those rising prices that the CPI is tracking. And this chart illustrates the trap perfectly. So let's imagine you get a 1.5% raise. Your nominal wage goes up. Awesome, right? But if inflation, that CPI number, goes up by 3% over the same time, your real wage has actually dropped by 1.5%. Your power to buy things just went down. Let that sink in for a second. You are literally making more money, but you can afford fewer things. That feeling of being squeezed even after you got a raise, that is the real wage trap in action. It's not in your head, it's right there in the math. It's why it's so important to think about your salary not just in dollars, but in whether it's beating inflation. So, now that we've seen the trap, let's put on our detective hats. What are the economic culprits that are pushing inflation up and making this trap so powerful right now? Okay, a huge factor is something called cost-push inflation. Now, this isn't the kind of inflation that happens because everyone suddenly has a ton of money and wants to buy stuff. Nope. This is inflation that's caused by the rising cost of the things needed to make and ship the products we buy. We're talking fuel, raw materials, you name it. And when it costs more to make things, those higher costs get passed directly onto us. And what's pushing those costs up? Well, two of the biggest offenders are soaring energy prices, which affects literally everything from a factory floor to the truck that delivers your packages, and the rising price of importing all the raw materials our economy runs on. But wait, there's another really powerful force making those import prices even higher, especially for a country like Japan, and it has everything to do with the value of our currency. So here's how this domino effect works. First, for a bunch of reasons, the yen gets weaker compared to other currencies. Right away, that makes it way more expensive for companies here to buy anything from other countries, including that fuel and those raw materials we just talked about. Well, to stay in business, those companies have to raise their prices. And who do they pass those higher costs on to? You guessed it, us, the consumers. It leads directly to higher prices in the store. In all of this, the cost-push inflation, the weak yen, it all adds up to create what economists call an increased household burden. It's a fancy term, but it just means that feeling of financial pressure, that struggle to cover the rising cost of everyday life. It's the direct impact of all these big economic forces on your family's budget. So, we've figured out the mystery, we've uncovered the trap, and we've even identified the main culprits. Now, let's pull it all together into a handy toolkit you can use to make sense of what's going on in the economy. Let's do a quick review of our new toolkit. We started with the CPI, which is how we measure inflation. Then we figured out the trap by understanding the huge difference between nominal and real wages. After that, we found the culprits, cost-push inflation and the weak yen. And it all leads to that final result, a higher household burden. You now have all the key terms to understand and explain why your paycheck feels like it's being stretched so thin. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. The next time you see a news report talking about rising wages or a growing economy, you'll know to ask the really important question. Okay, but what's happening to our real wages? That's the question that really matters.